Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, and wow, that was not the game we expected. I don't think anywhere. I didn't talk about Bowling Green all week because I didn't want you all to run away. I wanted you to be here for the tailgate show, for our Thursday show, for the post-game show. That was not the game a lot of people were expecting. Certainly not me. So props to Bowling Green. Penn State does survive the game. They win 34-27. We'll get into the different aspects of this game and what I thought I saw during my live broadcast analysis of Penn State Bowling Green. Of course, we're going to get to your thoughts and questions here on the postgame show. I don't know where to begin, truthfully, because you got the good news, got the bad news, got the fact they won, but is a win against a MAC opponent like this when you wanted them to come out and steamroll, you wanted them to look great, and they don't. What's the emotion you want to start with on this particular show? I'm always bad at that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to our chat, and Brett is already hot and bothered. He says, T. Frank, glad not to be you this stream, but if this is the worst version of Penn State we see, I'll be happy with that. Lots of good game. A lot of good in that game and a lot to learn from. Better now than later. Brett, I think that's a really reasonable approach to have. Let me put it this way. This is my first thought about this game, is what happened between the first half and the second half, where, if I'm correct, Bowling Green scored a field goal in the second half, or they score in the third quarter. I always have to go to my handy-dandy stats, because certainly they did not score as much in the second half. Yeah, they scored 3 points in the second half. They averaged 2.5 yards rushing, and they threw 2 interceptions, 9 of 19 in the second half. So what happened? I don't normally like to do this, but there is no difference between the first half and the second half, really, from like a game plan perspective or from a what happened perspective, other than it felt like there were a lot of guys on the defensive line that thought they were going to be done at halftime. And then they weren't. And suddenly, the things they were doing started to work. So I'm always very careful about how we phrase this, because I don't ever want to, it's a serious accusation to say somebody wasn't playing hard, but they didn't really change anything along the defensive line. They just started making plays. They started not falling off blocks, not getting pushed out of the gap. They started winning their one-on-ones along the defensive line, which is why I expected this to be a game where Penn State did not struggle from a defensive perspective. Now, the other thing is, from a defensive perspective, and I guess we'll start there, because I think that's the alarming thing here. Penn State scored 34 points. They would have had even more had Amari Evans not pushed off, and had Trey Wallace gone up to get that football, and had Drew Allard not thrown just the weirdest interception in the end zone, where there was no reason for that to be short. There was no reason for that to be thrown without air. He just kind of had a brain fart, and he's always good in the red zone. But the defense was obviously a problem in the first half. Now, here's what I saw. This defense, we haven't seen what Tom Allen does. There has been a little bit of, hey, Manny did this last year, so they're doing a lot of that. A lot of press man coverage and a lot of simple, basic things. So if you're a quarterback and you're Connor Bazelak and you've been in the college football for 6 years, you're essentially a scout team quarterback in the NFL at that point. Like, you should have seen enough football that you can diagnose cover 3 and cover 1, which is a family of man and zone coverages that are the same, with one deep safety, and then you play zone or man. And what they did is, when it was zone, they threw to the tight end, and they would pick apart the underneath stuff with quick passing game. And then when it was man, they would run crossing routes that rub up against each other, getting guys open. They would run bunch formations, stacked formations, and then it was always the underneath receiver. They'd run 2 over and then 1 guy under, and if it's 3rd and 4 or less, it doesn't matter if you're a Division I player. If the other team is executing the job correctly and the quarterback is throwing to the front shoulder of the receiver, that's almost impossible to stop. So Penn State was just playing kind of vanilla stuff in the first 2 games of the season. That's all they've played are those 2 coverages, really. So later in the half, towards the end, and then in the second half, they finally broke out some different coverages. But in certain situations, if they went back to man coverage, Penn State Bowling Green went to those conversion plays, and they were just there. So that was, to me, the story of the game is Penn State's defense. I don't want to call it a reheated game plan from the first week, but it felt very similar because that's what they did last week, and they want to take away underneath throws. They want to force pressure, but that pressure wasn't necessarily getting there, and the coverage wasn't as tight or as suffocating as it was against West Virginia because this team was running shorter routes. They're running man-beating concepts that weren't just down the football field trying to hit vertically. Get to some of your thoughts here in the chat. Steven back with this. He says, we are meh. Yeah, I can see how you feel that way coming out of this game. This is the BWI Live Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frankar. Appreciate all of you being with us. If you're curious about some of the things, we're going to be breaking into the scheme and the thoughts offensively. I saw somebody in the chat say this was the worst game plan from all 3 coordinators. I disagree with that. I thought Andy Koldnicki had a fine game plan if they execute it properly. I think there were some times they got run heavy. I don't like it when you go run for 2 yards, then run for 2 yards, but that's a results-based thing. Let's see what A. Campbell says. When you talk about second string and freshmen, try to get cute and give people touches that didn't get them last week. You are sending a bad message to the team before the game, and that you can take Bowling Green lightly. This is on Franklin. I find that interesting that you would say that, A. Campbell, when he's Mr. 1-0. But yeah, in a way, I don't know that it's on Franklin. I understand what you're saying, and you've made that argument. I think that it's a valid argument. But on defense, I didn't see anybody out there that I thought was not in the 2 deep. They rotate a lot. So their defensive linemen, those are the 4 defensive linemen or 5 defensive linemen they play. Their defensive ends, I didn't see Mason Robinson on the field. I didn't see any of those, like the young guys. We talked about the freshmen. That's on us. We talked about those guys coming into the game, expecting Penn State's defense to not give up 300 yards or 289 yards in the first half. I think they played a lot of guys on defense, and the problem is their linebacker depth is an issue. Specifically in that first drive and in the first quarter, they targeted Dom DeLuca. And they attacked him in man coverage. They attacked the zone coverages because, again, they were anticipating Penn State was going to play some confident coverages, let's say, cover 1, man coverage. And then when you're playing off of that and you're trying to load the underneath coverages, you play a similar style of zone defense. And so they attacked the weaknesses, either underneath or through the seams of the defense. But one of the areas they targeted was the tight end versus Penn State's linebacker. And the linebacker they targeted in a lot of those situations was Dom DeLuca. Bad tackling in the first half, I think, is something else we have to talk about. That was obvious. Bad tackling, bad angles. Those things will hurt you no matter who you're playing if you don't wrap up. And Bowling Green has some strong players. They have some good football players that can break some tackles. The running back and Zero, the tight end, those are some physical players. Those are dudes they were out there running through people. Sam Nabel says OSU lost to unranked Virginia Tech in the second game. It happens. It does. You don't feel good about it, and you don't feel necessarily good about it coming out of this game. But that is something that is, I think in the long run, I was thinking about this, Sam, this is probably a good thing for them if they learn from it. Because you win, and James Franklin gets to go in and say, and A. Campbell says it's James Franklin's fault that they felt this way, but you get to go into the locker room and say, hey, you won that game. You didn't play well enough in the first half to win that game. You need to 1-0, 1-0, 1-0, focus on the opponent upcoming. It is interesting because we have another one here from A. Campbell. He says, Cam Miller started and helped us get down 14. Cam Miller didn't start. So this is an important point, and it's a good thing you brought that up. Cam Miller did not start. KJ Winston got hurt. So KJ Winston on the first drive, I went back and I tried to see where he maybe had contact. I didn't see anything. So my thinking is something either happened pregame or he came in with something he was trying to play through, and he was not effective. He was not running to the football. He was not bursting around the field like I've seen before. We're not going to get any answers on that, but at the same time, he didn't play after, I think, maybe the first quarter. So Cam Miller didn't start. Jalen Reed went back to safety, and Cam Miller started playing the lion position. So that is not a decision that was this is the contingency plan. So we say, who's the lion or who's the backup lion? There is no backup lion. Jalen Reed is the lion, and then after that, it's just nickel corner. You're playing a 4-2 defense. So then you are taking away a strength of this team with KJ Winston not on the field because he's an excellent tackler. I think we saw the influence of him not being in the box when guys are missing tackles and your eraser isn't on the football field. Some guys were, I'm not saying they're diving at ankles. They were out of position and diving at ankles, not shying away from contact. But when you don't have that physicality and Jalen Reed is the lone buttress back there, this is the problem. So that's an issue for Penn State. If KJ Winston is long-term unhealthy, something happened to him in this game or pregame where that happened, that's a problem for the defense overall. Franklin Fanatic is here. He says, God bless James Franklin. Let's beat Penn State. It's 0-0 this next week, right? You got to go 1-0 in the bye week. Go 1-0 in the bye week, but you don't have an opponent at least. Ooh, we got a lot of stuff. People are spicy today. We got 2 weeks, T. Frank. I just need a film room explanation on what the heck happened in the first half. That's fine. Yeah, I'll break it down for you on film. It's super simple. They played man coverage. They got bunch routes, formations, and things like that to get guys open underneath, just creating a gap of space. And here's the other thing that I think I was underrating coming into this game that I saw watching Bowling Green is Connor Bazelak's a good quarterback. Like he's a good decision maker. Obviously, he's a Bowling Green good, as opposed to like, pay attention to this guy. He's 6 years in football. He knows how to read a defense. So if you give him a game plan, and you give him a defensive game plan where he can put the puzzle pieces together, that's where I think he was a difference maker in this game for Bowling Green. But you saw in the second half, once Penn State was able to kind of turn the tide and force them into obvious passing situations, that's when their athletes take over, and that's when our defensive player of the game took over. I'm going to flip a coin right now in my head, and I'm going to go with one of two players. And, I'm just going to do whatever I want here. It's Tony Rojas. Tony Rojas, player of the game, defensive player of the game, brought to you by McClanahan Law Firm and State College defensive attorney Matt McClanahan. He's a Penn State alum, Penn State football super fan. This was his 117th consecutive home game that he's been to. So he's just like you. He is a huge fan of Penn State football. Hopefully you never need a defense attorney, but if you ever do, you got Matt. mlaw.com if you want to check him out. That interception by Tony Rojas, I don't want to separate my shoulder patting myself on the back, but when this guy's different. So we've talked about these Penn State linebackers that have been exceptional athletes, big, physical guys that are going to play defensive end in the NFL. There hasn't been a guy who's 240 pounds and runs in coverage like Tony Rojas. We didn't get to see Micah Parsons do it, so I'll give you that if you want to say Micah Parsons would have been that guy in 2020. I think they were going to use him off the edge more, but that's just me. A guy that can blitz, he can play the run, and in coverage, he can stick with a guy 15 yards down the field and get a pass breakup, and then get a game-sealing interception. Tony Rojas was not on the field enough. This is my pitch is don't take him off the football field. He needs to be out there all the time. Him and Kobe King. That's what they need to have on the football field. Their three linebacker looks, they were better last week, but this week they were ineffective. When Tony Rojas wasn't on the field, they struggled to stop the run, and then in pass coverage, they were picked apart. His pass coverage instincts are incredibly important. But the field general, and I just want to give an honorable mention here to Jalen Reed, who had to play safety instead of his line position, so he was not in his normal position. He was not in a position to make his... I'm talking about all these positions. He was not literally in position to make a lot of plays because he was playing safety. And that rotation of playing guys in the box, playing guys deep, and that ambiguity of where guys are going to end up. When you've got Cam Miller out there instead of Jalen Reed, that is a different football player playing in the slot. When you lose KJ Winston, you cannot have this coverage umbrella just rotates and any player ends up in the box with the same effect. I thought Miller did a good job later in the game of being a better tackler, but it's the difference of he held on for a 4-yard gain as opposed to he hit the dude for 3.5 and the guy fell backwards and it's a defensive win. It's just what they did in the first game, they could not do because they did not have those 3 safeties. And that's where you want to have, if you could have Dejon Lane take a step and integrate more into the next man up mentality so you can have another safety back there and Jalen Reed can stay at his position. So that's a huge thing. Obviously, going into the bye week, that's incredibly important for them to get healthy. Robert says 32 seniors for Bowling Green gave us all we could handle. That's correct. They wanted that game. They absolutely wanted that game. Concerned, a rush to Drew is still an indecisive one. Michael, you and I are normally on the same page. I disagree. I thought Drew Aller was great in this game. There was an incompletion to Katron Allen, and I know that the people are going to not remember that play, but to set that up for you, the quarterback, when you're running, you want to have, if you're going to throw on the run, you want to have your shoulders square and more importantly your hips square to the where you're throwing if you can. He was being chased out of the pocket and could not set up. He couldn't get a good throw across his body back into the middle of the field, and he still put it on Katron Allen for what would have been a first down, but there was that bobbled snap, or the bobbled catch that didn't go for a first down. That was one great play. He threw the Trey Wallace into incompletion. Should he have led him further? Yes. Yes, he should have. There's 2 things at play with that. And I'm going to be here to defend the quarterback in reasonable situations. First off, that was 60 air yards. So he put 60 yards of loft on that football. Could he have thrown it 75 with a little more mustard? Yes. But then you are sacrificing accuracy and leeway with the receiver. So if you put it on a rope 70 yards and you're off by a step or 2, then the receiver has to make a hard play. He was throwing that ball with air because Trey Wallace is a basketball player that can go up, except Trey Wallace didn't go up. He tried to run underneath it and let the ball fall into the breadbasket, and the defensive back did a good job. The defensive back got beat but stayed in the play and waited to make a play at the catch point. That is what you're supposed to do if you're the DB, and if you're the receiver, you're supposed to go up and get it. There was enough time on that ball, enough loft that he could have gone up and gotten that football. Let's just... the other one is Amari Evans had a touchdown, right? So Drew Aller should have had 50 more yards passing, maybe 60 more yards passing in this game. If Amari Evans didn't push off for no reason. The ball was where it needed to be. He didn't need to create that separation. He just needed to stay calm at the catch point. And he didn't. So I'm not always going to defend the quarterback, but in these situations, I thought the receivers could have made a couple of different plays, played the ball a little bit differently, and Aller would have completed 2 more passes for 100 more yards. More than that, he would have 300 yards and at the very least 3 touchdowns. I thought Aller was great. His decision-making, even under pressure, rolling to his right, that play I described to you, and then there was the other one where he got out of it. There was a pressure in his face, and I think Nick Singleton picked it up. He stayed calm in the pocket. He is expecting one coverage. I watched this one back. He was expecting one coverage. Then he went to his second read because it wasn't there. They did a good job disguising. He gets all the way back to his third progression to Khalil Dinkins for a first down on 3rd down. With a muddy pocket. So those are all the things that Drew Aller wouldn't have done last year that he's putting together this year. The interception was bad. That was a boneheaded decision. But remember this year we're letting him have those? we're letting Drew have some incompletions. There was a rough throw early. He's got to get one of those clunkers out of his system. But I think the decision-making has been great. Brett agrees with me with the player of the game. He says Tony Rojas is a stud, and the running backs can run on anyone. People forget how young the DBs are, and this was their first true game week. Here's the thing is, a lot of I want to give credit to Zakee Wheatley, too, for coming back. I think he had a pass breakup in the second half, and he had that game-closing interception. He struggled in the first half. It was 3rd and 14. He's in the slot. Again, KJ Winston's not on the field. Maybe that's Jalen Reed, and he's playing out of position. I don't want to be too hard on this, but there are a couple of times he gave up plays in single coverage as one of the best players on the defense that they're changing the defense to get him on the field. He chases a guy inside. So when you're in man coverage and you've got a single high safety, everyone's help is in the middle of the defense. So you want to make sure you don't give up the outside where there's nobody to help you. He chases the guy inside, and suddenly it's a corner route. He breaks outside for the touchdown. 3rd and 14. The rush needs to get home. Dom DeLuca was free off the edge. He needs to bend that closer to the quarterback. Quarterback makes a great play because he steps up, sees it, throws under pressure, throws a perfect pass for a touchdown. Wheatley gives up that play, and then he comes back and gets a decisive 3rd down pass breakup, and then he gets an interception to seal the game on a bad overthrow. There might have been some pass interference on that play. I don't quite know. But I think that's an important point with the secondary is some guys were playing out of position. And then early in the game, I would say Cam Miller did struggle in some of those areas where they're throwing back shoulder on him. Again, like Connor Bazelak is a decent quarterback, 254 yards passing, 64% completion percentage. Decent day from him. The 2 interceptions at the end obviously were a problem. But yes, Tony Rojas is a stud. Nick Singleton. This is a great time to bring up Nick Singleton because holy cow, has he developed as a complete football player. Catching the football. That was an excellent touchdown by him, an excellent route run, and caught the ball in congestion. I love that because that is something I've watched him develop as a receiver, and it was not good to start. It was, might even say bad, where he was fighting the ball in the air constantly. I remember February of last year, so 23, heading into the 23 season, I heard, well, he's gotten a lot better as a receiver, and I'm watching him just fight the ball in practice during spring. And then you fast forward and he's getting a little better, and he's getting a little better, and then just a natural hands catch between 2 players for a touchdown. Andy Kotelnicki served up a really good game plan. Tyler Warren had 149 yards receiving, and I think 146 yards receiving, 62 yards after the catch. Nick Singleton, 119 yards. Penn State ran for 234 yards in this game. And the vision by Nick Singleton, the patience, he's starting to learn how to bounce the football. I'm getting excited talking about this because that's the Nick Singleton we all wanted to see, was the complete back, the guy who's athletic, explosive, strong, all the things. Runs like he's a hammer and everybody else is a nail. But on that touchdown run to seal the game, that was a run that wasn't there. The inside zone or the man concept, whatever it was, at the A-gap was gone. Bowling Green shut that down. He stayed patient. He didn't lower his head. He didn't panic. He ran to daylight, and suddenly there wasn't anybody there. Nick Singleton, 23, would have buried his head and tried to force his way through the offensive line and through 13 players in order to try and get a first down. He jump cut in the backfield a couple of times. I thought his lateral movement has been excellent lately. He's still a bit of a train tracks guy where he needs to get a straight line, but he's starting to be able to jump a little bit, slalom side to side. So I thought that was a great game from him. Katron Allen had a very efficient game as well. 101 yards, 7.2 yards per carry. All these numbers are super healthy. The only number that isn't healthy here at the end is the score. 34-27. Yes, there was some up and down in the second half in terms of not putting things together, especially when you have a 3-and-out in the fourth quarter. That's not great from Penn State there to not put the hammer down at that point. But again, I believe that was the drive where they would have had a touchdown. Oh, I'm sorry, no. That was the one time where you had the offensive coordinator call 2 run plays and then a pass play on 3rd and 6. A little bit of shades of last year in that situation. You guys are fired up. Appreciate you here. If you're here on the BWI Live show, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We are going through Penn State's win over Bowling Green. A bit of a surprise that they're through with the score as close as it is. But if you want to give this video a like and subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, always appreciate that. If you donate to the channel, we appreciate that as well. It's the easiest way for me to see your comments because everyone's talking in the chat and I can't get to everyone's comments, but if you leave a donation, it goes into a separate thing. It's in these big, bright letters, and that's why we're talking to C. Paul King here. He says, everybody just calm down a little bit. Wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. So often still look really good, and defense played great in the second half. Refs were terrible, cost us points. I wouldn't say it cost Penn State points. There was the phantom holding call. That wasn't a holding call. I believe that was on... might have been on Drew Shelton or Vega Ioane. I'm not quite sure. I was doing 16 things and I missed that one particular play. But it was an OPI for sure on Omari Evans because that is what he does. The thing I'm interested in seeing is, and I have to go back and watch the tape because 2 critical drives in the second half, Nolan Rucci's playing left tackle. I think that's significant. I've been watching Drew Shelton the first 2 weeks. He's been okay. He gave up a lot of pressure in the first half. It was concerning. Concerning, like, you cannot do that. It doesn't matter Bowling Green, doesn't matter who it is. You can't do those things. And there was no brain fart. It was just he was beat on a bunch of plays. Suddenly in the second half, they put in Nolan Rucci. So I need to go back and see how much of the second half did he play? What's the status of Drew Shelton? But James Franklin said, without saying this, let's put some context clues together. Drew came back in the middle of the summer. He was cleared for contact in like June. So this is an offensive lineman that hasn't been cleared for contact through spring. We know he had off-season surgery. You can't get bigger and stronger to the fullest to maximize your potential if you're rehabbing. That's just a fact. I don't know what they're able to do in the mediary because I don't know what the injury is, so I don't know like what else he's doing to get strong or all those things. But it's really hard to do both, rehab and improve. And at the end of camp, we saw Javen Williams bouncing around to guard. We saw a couple of other things going on with the offensive line and kind of a hole at the backup tackle position. And James Franklin said this, that they feel like they have a lot of answers inside. We need to find some more answers at tackle. Because I don't think the backup left tackle was totally settled because I don't know that the starter was totally settled. We said like this is a player that we are watching this year to know what is he because we've seen him as a freshman, we've seen him be injured in play, and now we're seeing him start for the first time. We don't have a clean read of what Drew Shelton is as an offensive lineman. So I'm not saying I've been waiting for this to happen, but I've been monitoring this particular situation, and it wasn't just on the right side filling in for Anthony Donko. I think that is meaningful that he came in, especially because the game wasn't over when Rucci came in. And I also have to see how he played. That's something I haven't been able to check because the game went into the fourth quarter. It went all the way down to the final 4 minutes. I wasn't expecting that. You weren't expecting that. The only people expecting that were Bowling Green and then the Penn State coaching staff who, you know, like they like to see these things coming so they can say, I told you so to their players. Greg says, happy for the win. Multiple choice question. A Bowling Green that is good. Allen not as good as Diaz. Lack of talent. I'm going to try and not get in trouble here, Greg. What I've seen from Tom Allen over time at Indiana has not arrived at Penn State in terms of the plan, the implementation of diverse coverages to confuse the quarterback. They haven't done any of that. I don't like saying that anyone's holding any playbook back or anything like that. I think Penn State thinks, and James Franklin said this, they can play man coverage and win. And this week, we saw that didn't happen exactly. And part of this, Greg, is that the D-line didn't play great in the first half, and they did in the second half. In order to play press man coverage, to be that aggressive with your defensive backs, two things have to happen. You have to control the game with your defensive line. You have to stop the run. They didn't stop the run. So they started playing too high coverages to stop the pass at the end of the second half, the beginning of the third quarter. And that led to more runs because the defensive line couldn't stop anybody. Fast forward to the second half, and some of the things they do up front are more aggressive than Tom Allen did at Indiana because he didn't have the defensive athletes to jump gaps. Well, now he's got Devon J. Thomas and Zane Durant and Abdul Carter. So they were running a lot of twists, run stunts in the first half. And when I observed Manny Diaz's defense do this, they never lost ground. So if you're a defensive lineman and you're trying to jump back a gap, what needs to happen is your teammate has to create penetration so that you can come at a lateral angle behind them. If you start looping, anytime you lose ground as a defender, you are opening up the opportunity to be outgapped by the offense, to be attacked and pushed further downfield. So you have to always be going forward, or at the very least, lateral in an angle that is headed, like a 2-degree angle, like a 2-degree angle. They were not doing that in the second half. They were popping up, standing up, bubbling, and that created running lanes and seams and opportunities to get reached by the Bowling Green offense. They stopped doing that, and suddenly they were getting tackles for loss or tackles for no gain. So it is the game plan was simple, and when you play simple, you have to be perfect, because everyone knows what's coming. And they did not play perfect. They did not play well in that first half, but they did in the second, and suddenly everything changed. Michael says, feels like Bowling Green put some 24 points. Sorry, I'm having a hard time sometimes reading these out loud off first blush. I was never good at sight reading in church. Feels like Bowling Green put some 24 beat this D tape out. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Like the game plan to beat this defense, yes and no, because that's the game plan to beat any defense that only plays 2 coverages or is trying to only play. This is the whole conversation about Don Brown at Michigan a couple years ago, and Ohio State boat raced them in every game because they were only playing press man coverage. And it's like, okay, you want to always play one coverage. We know how to beat that, and we've also got athletes. So I think when Penn State, this is me trying not to say these things. If there is something for USC on the road in the middle of October, I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly they're like, surprise, here's the actual defense. It's not going to be drastically different. They're going to still try and play these press man coverages, aggressive coverages. I don't think that that's going to be changing anytime soon, but I do think they will add more to this defensive playbook over time. I do believe they wanted to get out of the month of September playing 2 coverages. I've seen enough to say like they wanted to just play single high and show you nothing, and then suddenly do a bunch of crazy stuff once they hit their Big Ten schedule. There was the opportunity for that as the way this game set up, because again, even Illinois is kind of a one-read team where they're run first, RPO, and the quarterback one and run sort of quarterback. So there was an opportunity for them to have a very simple, aggressive game plan and get that done heading into October with a really lean film study. I don't know at this point if they're going to get away with that, though. But largely, they just played cover 2, which I don't think was anything drastic. And by the way, if you are new to the show and you are curious what some of these terms mean, hopefully I'm explaining that well, because these are the things that matter. I hope that you're coming here to watch this show because you want to know what's going on with what actually happened in the game. If you want somebody to be shouty and vibes, probably not going to be me, but I appreciate you being here. And there's a ton of people here, so hopefully you wanted to know what's going on with this game. In the second half, they did some things to disguise some coverages and then jumped into other ones. That is more of what I was expecting, but I think that they're trying to maybe hold some of that back. And I don't blame them. I would have thought the same thing. So we got, okay, I see what you're saying. So we had this conversation earlier. A. Campbell said that Penn State playing second stringers. Cam started at corner with Winston in. Yes, okay. I don't think necessarily that Cam Miller is a backup. So I think that's the miscommunication here. I don't think they view him as James Franklin basically said that. this week is that don't be surprised if other players are starting, but it's about how many reps you play and when you play those reps. Yes, he came in and he did not play well at the beginning of the game. So that's information. That is not I don't think that's a signal from anybody. That is, they have 4 corners they like, maybe even 5, and one of them had a bad game. He wasn't the starter before. He had to play the nickel after that. So I'll agree to what you're saying here. I see what you're saying, but I also don't think they see Cam Miller as a backup or somebody that isn't part of the 2 deep that's going to play. So we'll see how that goes forward, if those snaps begin to go in one direction or another, because, yeah, as the game went on, he moved in the slot, but he played a lot today. How he plays outside, at outside corner, how that goes in the future is something we're going to have to watch as the season develops, because that is something that they're going to be doing throughout the year. 35 MAL, 350 MAL. A blowout where you get a ton of reps for your depth pieces, or a gritty game that tests your starters when the game was, and let's be honest, never really in doubt. What's more valuable? That's a great question. I think this was, you stumped me. You straight up stumped me, because I think it's important to get those young players reps, because we need to find out about some of those young guys if there's attrition and injury throughout the year. You want to get those guys reps. This is a wake-up call that they have to take every game seriously. So if they do get over the hump and they beat USC on the road and UCLA, and here I am overlooking UCLA and Illinois, I think I'm going to go with this was a good wake-up call to show the players you can't take any team for granted. And leadership, all those things were something that we've talked about this offseason of keeping guys focused. I don't think they have a leadership issue, but you might have had some guys that thought they were like, oh, great, we're going to play half of football and then we're going to have a good time on the sideline. And you got to put the work in to dominate in order to do that. So I would say that's probably a good thing in the long run if they learn the right lesson. Because you can't keep doing this. It has to be that you come out and you play your hair on fire from the beginning snap. And I'm not saying it was even like really bad. It just wasn't. I'll put it this way. This was the first half of bad football I've seen from the Penn State defensive tackles probably since 2021. Maybe sometime in 2022, I'm not remembering. But the defensive tackles specifically, where they had a subpar game, I don't remember it in 23 for sure. And I want to say probably the back half of 22 wasn't that way for most of the year. So it's been a long time till the point that I don't really remember. I have a terrible memory, so that might not mean anything. And you could probably put in the chat where I'm completely wrong. Mini Moon says, it seems like Franklin is still stifling the offensive play calling in decisive moments. Was hoping this season he just let Andy Kotelnicki do his thing. I think that's Andy Kotelnicki. Andy Kotelnicki believes in running the football. He believes in a lot of those concepts. It's a philosophical mesh. They threw the football a lot in this game, especially in the second half or second quarter when Drew started cooking. He was 10 of 14 at one point for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns or something like that. They threw the ball a lot to get ahead. I think it's not that they were less aggressive. I think that they just didn't execute some of the concepts they were trying to get to, and I am interested to see how those go. Here's the thing. Let's just talk about this again. James Franklin does not interfere in the play calling. He lets the play caller call the plays. What he says is, hey, we're going to go for it on 4th if we get enough yards, and so the play caller might be like, great, I get to run the ball again. That is the influence that he has. But this idea that they're not calling certain plays, James Franklin at 2 points, from what I understand, he sets the compass for the offense and the defense at the beginning of the year in January. I want us to do this based on our talent. I want this to be our team. And then you're tasked with going about developing a plan to make that happen. You can disagree with that part, and I think that is a valid thing to say, because I think last year that was an issue where they said we're going to play to the defense, and so the offense played in a deferential way. I don't see that from Andy Kotelnicki. They took shot play after shot play after shot play. And at a certain point, you have to give it to the defense. The defensive backs held up. Those two DBs were not so badly beaten the way they were for Amari Evans' first touchdown. They were in position. Penn State should have had 2 bomb touchdowns in this game. I thought coming into this contest, if they played the coverages that they did, Bowling Green would give up 400 yards passing. And you connect on a couple of those, and it's not too far off. Penn State ran the ball for 234 yards. Both of their running backs had above 5 yards a carry. I think if you just don't like Franklin, donate to the channel and say, I don't like James Franklin. Because that's more of what we're talking about. Because I don't see an influence of James Franklin on this particular game plan, and I haven't the last 2 games. Jay says, I've never seen a team sub so much at linebacker in the edge spot. Makes no sense to me. King, Carter, Andy Rojas, Tony Rojas need to be on the field. Yes. They substitute so much. And I want to give credit to Sean Fitz for this one. I think that part of that is tactical. So, defensive headset communication. If the offense substitutes, you have to give the defense enough time to match. You can't substitute and go no huddle and hurry up. But you can substitute quickly and then catch the defense off guard. So I think Penn State is gaming it a little bit, where if they feel like they're going to go against a team that's going to go up tempo, or they want to give defensive communication time to the linebacker, they run their guys off the field slowly. I wasn't able to pick up on that in the other game because they kept going to shots right here on Garrett Green. But in this game, you could see them taking their sweet time. So I think part of it is they're trying to game that, and they feel like they can go in waves on the defensive line. But I agree, at linebacker, when I don't see Tony Rojas out there, I start getting nervous for you guys. And I think it shows. When he's on the field, he's a difference maker. Twisted Grip says, Matt Millen is really hard to listen to on the broadcast. I had it on mute. I can't say one way or the other. I don't like to disparage or say mean things about individuals because it's a hard job. I don't do it. I won't do it. I refuse to do it. And I also like it when people aren't mean to me when I'm here, because this stuff is harder than you'd think. But it is a common thing that a lot of people say. All right, so this is helpful. Franklin is a dead end. Tom Allen had a bad day. I do think, James, that there is a certain learning curve for him right now of how to use all of these new tools, how to fit the mold at Penn State to play more aggressively than he did in the past, and to play a little more conventional football. I need more Tom Allen, honestly. I need less Manny Diaz. I'm not saying he's just playing do what Manny did, because I do think he's his own man and he's trying to do it in his own way. But there are just little subtle differences, like blitzing from depth is something Tom Allen does. And I've noticed some of the linebackers are a little closer than where they would have been in his defense at Indiana without a full disguise, but they're not double A gap, shotgun in the face of the center, threatening the offense anymore. They are not hyper aggressive with their pressure packages. So there is a little bit of a split the baby here thing going on from how the adjustment is going. And I hope that this conversation turns around where Tom Allen starts doing some more and some different things with the defense, because it's interesting to me. I love breaking that stuff down. I love sharing it with you on the film study, the Sunday film study at bluewhiteillustrated.com. That stuff is fun for me, I'm a fan of it. So hopefully we get to see some more diversity in that as the season goes on. Brett is back. He says some fans really take a mile when you give them an inch. We have Drew get a third. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read too fast. When have we ever seen Drew get a third option on a third and long? He's really improved. Yes, he's really improved. I apologize. I'm kind of sticking here with people in this side of things. If you said Drew Aller had a bad game, we didn't watch the same game. That is not what happened there. Third and short, try to drive them off sides and run inside was exactly the same play from last week, resulting in the same loss of yardage. What is the injury to Andrew Rapplier? Love the podcast. Don't know. Andrew Rapplier not playing in this game was a pretty big deal. I think you saw Khalil Dinkins was still, I think, pretty limited. Luke Reynolds was out there more than anybody. So that's 2 for Luke Reynolds at this point. on his way to burning his red shirt, which seems like it's going to happen this year. Rappleyea was the number 2 tight end through the line during practice on Wednesday. So whatever happened after we were there, because he was healthy, talking to the coaching staff, running all the routes, looking exactly the same way he has the entire time. So I don't know what happened to Andrew Rappleyea, but obviously it's something that we're going to monitor and keep you up to date at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Great time to remind you here to subscribe to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You missed our big sales where we had a 50% off for the year. I would still encourage you to sign up for the full year so you don't miss a beat of Penn State information. But if you want to sign up and you want the deal, code PSU1, 2 months for $1. That's our special offer. That's Penn State football coverage, recruiting coverage, basketball, wrestling, 24/7. It's just the promo code PSU1. You get 2 months for $1. And make sure when you sign up, there is a $1 deal, I think, for a month. If you don't use the promo code, you only get a month. So use the promo code PSU1. I'm trying to help you out, trying to get you to save some money. That gives you 2 months. So that's basically the full football season for just $1. Talk That Trace says, hey, T. Frank, saw a lot of Sean Clifford-ish type of plays from Drew today. Like when he would run the ball himself to gain yards. How much do you feel like those were panic plays versus strategic efforts? No, I think that was strategic. Watching the coverage, there was nothing open. So Drew is not a pretty runner. We know that. He had a couple of opportunities to get some yardage, and then he had that one really ugly sack. He was trying to throw the ball away. So he was breaking tackles. He was trying to get to the sideline to throw. There was nothing there, and I think he was trying to throw the ball away, and he made one juke too many, and suddenly he's 21 yards and a sack. I don't see that as a panic decision. I see that as that's an effort over instinct. And the number of throwaways and loving to take the safe play, that's all gone from Talk That Trace. You got me thinking Trace and McSorley again. No, I think that he has improved as a decision maker under pressure. I think he's improved as a passer. I think he's improved as a commander of the offense. I think that it's run really well through him so far this year. The issue is the pressure that he's trying to avoid is immediate and should be inescapable, but he actually got out of a lot of that stuff today. His pocket mobility is good. In high school, we saw him have good pocket mobility. It just took him a little bit of time to get comfortable again. He was not a comfortable player his first 2 years. He is now a comfortable player. And so some of the issues that they're having, that they've had in the past, where you can blitz Drew Aller and you can send the house at him and you can make him flinch, he doesn't flinch anymore. I think he's been very good. So here are the positives coming out of this. Nick Singleton looks like a complete running back. Receiving threat, running threat, vision, the creativity starting to happen. Drew Aller is an elite decision maker. He's starting to play with better control and poise. I know he had a dumb interception and a dumb sack, but we're giving him the leeway to do some dumb stuff because he does other great things like throw the ball 65 yards in the air for a touchdown, then making it look effortless and running to the sideline across his body back to a running back for what should have been a first down. He does a lot of really great stuff. Don't expect perfection. What he's doing right now is enough to get him drafted. I know that sounds silly. This is some good stuff from Drew Aller. Sorry, Corey says this. I can't corroborate this, so this is just some tea here in the chat. Corey might have been at the game. I don't know. But Corey Chrisman says Rappleyea on crutches, boot on right foot. So I didn't see any of that stuff, and I didn't see any reporting from my guys. But I'm not saying Corey. I'm giving you the information given to me. So we'll get more information on that at some point. Somebody's gonna ask James Franklin. Somebody's gonna ask somebody or other. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com if we can get that information for you later in the week to confirm what Corey saw. I'm sorry, there was somebody here who had a good question that I want to. Matthew John. Matthew's back for another season. He says, what's going on with Denine and Sutton and Carter not getting to the QB or as much pressure? That's a great question. I think it's an issue. I think that at this point, I'll need to confirm a couple things. What's the average time to throw for these quarterbacks that are playing Penn State? Are they getting the ball away in under 2 seconds? And that is a schematic thing. Because there was a lot of quick throwing in this game. So I don't want to just completely gloss over that. But Denai Denison and Abdul Carter have not gotten the same amount of pressure routinely as Chop Robinson and Adisa Isaac. And I'll just say, like, there's a reason franchise pass rushers are rare. They're not all built the same way. Chop was a little undersized, but Chop was different. Chop had I hate these. He had a feel for it. He knew the snap count really good. You see this defensive line, they're really jumpy. They're wanting to get after it. There's a little bit like Chop wasn't guessing. He apparently studied the tendencies of the offensive lineman, the center, or the quarterback well enough that he was getting a jump on the ball, and he was really, really good at it. That's a talent that goes beyond just his athleticism. Abdul has a similar level of athleticism, but he's running wide. In this game, what happened that I noticed, and I need to go back and watch, this is something else I want to get some details on. I saw him get pushed upfield a lot. Instead of being able to plant his outside foot and bend the edge, as they say, that's the scouting term, bending back to the quarterback. He's trying to be faster than the blocking instead of getting to the point and then using his speed as a weapon and his strength as a weapon to turn the corner. This is where he's a young pass rusher. So we saw some good things from the first part of the season in game 1, and then here in game 2, not as much. Sam says Tyler Warren. So we get to see like 10 minutes of practice. And some of the things I was noticing during the practice period we were there, I was like, oh my. So late in the week, I was like, hey, do you think Tyler Warren can be a guy that has a big game? And everyone's like, yeah, probably. I said on the Tailgate Show, like, can Tyler Warren be a guy that gets some yards in this game? Yeah, Tyler Warren was awesome in this game. 8 catches for 146 yards. Excellent job. Omari Lead Academy, we don't necessarily know right now with KJ Winston. He did not play after the first 2 drives, but that does change a lot of stuff on defense, right? So that's a part of the conversation here on the postgame show. Thanks for joining us. If you didn't see the whole show, you can always watch this on replay or on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel afterwards. We always make sure that our subscribers get a copy of the video, copy of the show on the site as well. Or if you listen on the podcast version, appreciate you. We've been trying to grow our podcast audience, and I'm super excited for this season because I think we're going to get that done. Let's see what else we got here in the chat. I think I've gone through everything I was thinking about in this game. Amari Evans looked good other than the OPI. He's going to be a guy, again, that is average depth of target of like 28 yards down the field this year for this team. Still nothing from Julian Fleming, and still nothing from Caden Saunders, and still nothing from Liam Clifford. Fleming had 1 catch for 3 yards. He was more in position this week than he was last week, at least noticeably. But I'm not convinced that Liam Clifford was healthy. And Caden Saunders, once again, didn't play on offense. James Franklin did the turnaround of, we think that we're past that. Well, they may be healed, but they're not necessarily effective just yet. So I think that part of the offense needs to get healthy before we make any more sweeping accusations about the passing game. I just don't think they're at full strength. But it is a great sign that week 2, it's Tyler Warren for 146 yards, and Trey Wallace didn't even catch a pass. I know he was targeted, but that's surprising. I thought he caught at least 1 pass in this game. I think that's a great sign. Last season, they funneled the entire offensive passing concept through one position, through one player. This year, they're adaptable to where it's one guy 1 week and another guy in the next week. And through that all, Penn State's running game has been explosive. So I'm going to go in here and look again at our advanced stats. Look at some big plays. Penn State had 148 yards passing on explosive plays and almost 200 yards rushing on runs of 10 or more yards. That's really good. If they had just put that with a complete drive here and there to score more points, you come away with nothing on an interception, they could have put up 40 points in this game. Coulda, woulda, shoulda. They didn't. That's obviously a problem that they have to fix. But almost 200 yards, explosive plays on the ground with Nick Singleton. That's what you expected out of this offense. That's what you expected, and they finally got it. They're finally getting it, I should say. So I think those things are great. You're welcome. Always appreciate answering questions for people. Rob says Penn State did not get Bazelak off the spot in the first half, plus the ball was getting out quick the second half. Guys were not open. Yeah, they put the screws to him. They also put him in more obvious situations where they had to throw the ball, and they could do a little more aggressive stuff on that side. And then, again, they made the whole thing one-dimensional by being able to take away the run and put game pressure on the quarterback and make him throw into some bad spots, which is why Tony Rojas was able to get the ball. Can he wear number 11 too? Can he also wear 11? He plays linebacker. He's just really good, man. I like to be a positive person, end on some good notes. So again, we'll recap those to end the show. I don't want to keep you guys too long if I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. And I think everyone feels pretty good. I think after about an hour of talking this out, right? Everyone feels okay. Some of the emotions have simmered down a little bit. Well, I'm going to get those going again tomorrow. Sunday Film Study comes out. We'll be going through every single play, essentially, on the Blue White Illustrated message board, giving you the what and the why during our recap of the game there. So subscribe. Once again, it's just $1 for 2 months. Use promo code PSU1 to get it for $1. 2 months of access. We will be back with that, and of course, on Monday, we'll have James Franklin's press conference. He might not have a press conference on Monday because it's a bye week. We'll definitely have something from James Franklin next week. And the BWI Live show, I guarantee you that's coming to you Tuesday at 10 a.m. So we'll talk to you then.